Hey, and welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how I created this animated time-lapse of a lighthouse going from sunset to nighttime. This animation is a result of lots of testing and experimentation, so I don't think my method is the best and the only way of doing this, but I'm sure you will find here some useful tricks that you can use if you want to create your own animation. And by the way, the software that I use here are Photoshop and After Effects if you're wondering. So yeah, enough of my talking and let's start. First and most important step is to prepare the artwork for the animation. I used my old artwork for this, but the problem is it was originally painted in a daytime setting. So I tweaked it in Photoshop and changed the sky into a sunset and night. I also separated the artwork into different layers so I can animate them individually. After editing, I saved each layer with transparency and imported them into After Effects. This is the actual project file for this animation, and I will walk you through of how this works. This is how it looks without any animation and effects. I first made the sky transition from sunset to night by animating the opacity of the two sky layers around the middle of the timeline. This results in a smooth cross dissolve between the two layers. But the problem with this method is it creates a transparency during the transition and it doesn't look right. So to solve this problem, I added a solid layer with a dark blue color below the two sky layers to hide the transparent pixels. This results in a more convincing and realistic transition. For the sea, I added a gradient ramp effect to change its color depending on the time of day. And I animated the start and end color value in the middle of the timeline where the sky starts its transition. I also added a Gaussian blur and set the blurriness to 5 to make the horizon line soft. Since the lighthouse has a bright color, I added a color balance and curves effect to change its color depending on the time of day. Then I animated both effects where the sky starts its transition. I also decreased the saturation to -20% since colors are faded when light is absent. Finally, I decreased the exposure amount to -0.51 to darken the lightness of the original color of the lighthouse. Now that we have a working transition from sunset to night, the next step is to add elements into the scene to make it more lively and beautiful. To create clouds, I added fractal noise effect and adjusted the brightness and contrast slider to form a cloud. I also adjusted the noise width and height to stretch the clouds a little bit. Then I animate the offset turbulence properties to make the clouds move. I also animated the evolution property by adding a time expression that is multiplied by 100. After animating the clouds, I added an effect called Shift Channels. This effect converts the black pixel of a layer into an alpha channel if it is set as luminance. Now I can colorize the clouds by adding gradient ramp. I made the start and end color different to emphasize the distance of the clouds. I then animated the color depending on the time of day and set the keyframe where the sky starts its transition. Then I pre-compose a layer so I can convert it into a 3D layer without affecting the effects inside. After that, I position the layer to make it appear like it has a perspective view. This adds depth to the clouds since the top area is bigger than the bottom area. Not to mention the two different colors I set made it even more convincing. After that, I duplicated the first cloud I created. I wanted to create a parallax effect and add variations to the clouds, so I edited the color of the duplicated cloud and make the offset turbulence animation much slower. The sun was made from a plugin called Optical Flares. I placed the sun behind the lighthouse in the sea and animated its position and brightness to make it appear like it is disappearing from the horizon. The animation for the sun ends before the sky turns into night. The moon was also made from optical flares, and I animated its position to make it appear above the lighthouse. The stars in the night was made by combining fractal noise effect, colorama effect, and the CC starburst effect. I changed the colorama to pure white and set the scatter value of the CC starburst to 2000 to make the star more random. I also decreased the size property of the CC starburst to 50 and animated the layer's opacity so it will only appear when the night sky starts. I decided to add haze to soften the horizon line and to add depth and distance to the scene. I used a shape layer for this and added a Gaussian blur to soften its edges. I also added a fill effect and animated the color property so it will change depending on the time of day. I painted the beacon in Photoshop and imported it in After Effects. Then I animate its opacity so it will appear only when the night sky starts. To make the wave, I applied a fractal noise effect into a solid layer and changed its scale height and scale width property to make the noise thinner and longer. I also added shift channels and fill effect to change and animate its color depending on the time of day. And finally, I adjusted the layer scale height to 30% and moved it to cover the sea. The glitter was made using CC Particle World and Dip Glow. I adjusted the birth rate and longevity of the particle to make it appear like it is glowing. Then I changed the physics animation into a cone axis and increased the resistance property so the particle will only stay in its place. And finally, I animated the birth color and death color of the particle depending on the time of day. I also added Dip Glow effect to add a realistic glow to the particles. After that, I pre-composed the wave and glitter layer and added a bokeh effect to make it appear out of focus. The shadow of the lighthouse was made from a solid layer and masked it using the pen tool to shape it like the lighthouse. I animated the opacity so it will disappear when the night sky starts, and I set the blending mode to multiply. And the final step is to color correct the scene, and that's it. Thank you for watching this video, and I really hope you learned something from this. And if you do, please don't forget to like and share this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and click the notification icon if you want to be notified whenever I posted a new video, because I'll be posting more soon. So yeah, take care.